the prices are going to get directly passed on to the consumers. And the consumers in this case are doctors, patients, healthcare providers. They will feel the pinch.
Welcome to Off the Chart, a business and medicine podcast featuring lively and informative conversations with healthcare experts, opinion leaders, and practicing physicians about the challenges facing doctors and medical practices. I'm your host, Austin Littrell. This episode features a conversation between medical economics managing editor Todd Shryock and Rohit Harve, a technical operations partner and healthcare expert with PA Consulting. Rohit joins the show to talk tariffs and what impact they might have on the medical device industry.
I'm here with Rohit Harve, a healthcare expert with PA Consulting, and today we're going to talk about tariffs. Rohit, thanks for joining me.
Glad to be here, Todd. Thank you.
So let's talk about the current landscape as of right now, which is changing rapidly. Give me an overview of how do tariffs currently impact the medical device industry and which devices or components are most affected by them?
Yeah, that's a great question, Todd. As you can imagine, it's a volatile situation, with trade wars and things like that. So definitely, medical device industry is going to be at the center of it. So if the tariffs are imposed on the medical device industry, I would say segments focused on discretionary care. So these are like elective procedures, aesthetic devices, high-end diagnostic tools, right? These are some of the things that are going to be impacted mainly on profitability, growth, and even market dynamics, right? So I would say maybe if you just drill down on this profitability, right? This is more around tariffs are going to impact your cost of goods, squeeze margins. And so when that happens, components like semiconductors, surgical grade materials, polymers will all shoot up in cost. And when you look at the discretionary care segment, these are aesthetics, elective surgery centers. They don't have the pricing power. The pricing power is very limited. So they cannot pass on the cost of the components to the buyers without dampening the demand. So there'll be a compression in kind of the profitability. The EBITDA is going to definitely come down. And what the companies will need to do now is really focus on operational efficiencies. What are some of the ways they can shave out cost with the components? Do they really need all these different colors on their components? There's things like design to cost, design to value that is going to happen, but costs are going to come up. One of the things that I was also going to look at as I was digging deeper into this, our research was that there's a lot of medical device innovation that's happening, and they all consume these parts and products. And these are cutting edge technologies, semiconductors that has limited manufacturing potential in at least the United States. So these are going to get impacted. And so the innovation is going to get slowed down a little bit as projects will get postponed. And my sense would be that this would also squeeze kind of like your cash flow. And once the cash flows cut down, then you can't do your M&A. So the growth is going to also be impacted. And then without saying, I mean, stock market, with lower valuation, profitability declines, could see an impact to the earnings and PE multiples. So that's kind of like the way I would say the medical industry is going to be affected.
You talked about costs. Who ultimately with medical devices is going to see an increase there? Is it the physicians who might be buying these for their practice? Will that then be passed on to the patient? Who's ultimately going to be paying more?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, right? So one of the things we have to look at it is kind of like the price elasticity here, right? So the way to look at this is medical devices that are life-saving or essential have an inelastic demand. So what basically that means is that even if the prices go up, the consumers will continue to need it, will demand it, right? And so for those components, the prices are going to get directly passed on to the consumers. And the consumers in this case are doctors, patients, healthcare providers. They will feel the pinch. When it comes to kind of like the elective care, discretionary care, in those cases, I would say it'll be tough to kind of like pass on the cost reduction. But I basically worry that it's going to slow down on people consuming it. And so there's going to be a drop in the demand. And when the demand drops, then there's going to be a little bit of a slowdown in kind of like the efficiency piece. But broadly speaking, this is going to impact healthcare costs, right? When you think about patients, consumers getting impacted by it, the healthcare is going to costs are going to shoot up. And we talked about innovation. If the innovation is going to slow down a little bit, then it's going to impact the quality of care. And typically, what ends up happening in quality of care is folks and kind of like the lower income segment are going to get impacted much more than the others.
Say, Keith, this is all well and good, but what if someone is looking for more clinical information?
Oh, then they want to check out our sister site, patientcareonline.com, the leading clinical resource for primary care physicians. Again, that's patientcareonline.com.
What about supply chain issues? Do tariffs have any effect on supply chain? And if so, explain how.
Yeah, so the biggest question out there, Todd, is you've got 30 years of free market that was in place to kind of like go with the supply chain that's currently in place, right? So a lot of these leaders are thinking, should we rip out this supply chain, built it with the free market for policies from a 4-year administration, right? So that's kind of like the big question on the table. But I sense that the manufacturers will definitely try to look for local suppliers, right? And it's going to be a very difficult and a costly solution because we talked about some of the semiconductors. These are medical devices that require specialized components, advanced materials, and that's not available domestically. So that's going to really impact your raw material cost, aspects as such, right? One of the piece with supply chain where you bring your products in, they need to be approved by FDA, right? So you have these regulatory barriers, and FDA is looking to make sure that the products are safe, effective, and compliant. And typically, when you're looking at your class 3 medical devices, these are kind of like the high risk devices. You might require clinical studies. You might need to go back to the hospitals. So there's going to be a lot of regulatory complications that may also come up as you're bringing the supply chain back inside. But the most important thing that I'm going to say here is that there is economies of scale right now. So the global supply chain, the way they're set up now, my sense would be that the tariffs, even if you look at them one-on-one basis, I think the cost to manufacture products internally, in-house, or reshoring, the labor arbitrage is going to make it so more expensive that I think that the manufacturers will just suck it up and kind of like go with kind of like status quo for now in the short term, and they'll pass on the cost to the patients, consumers, and doctors. But in the longer run, they'll start thinking about bringing some of these supply chain raw materials and input materials back in, and that's where I would say people need to start thinking about efficiency and bringing automation and other things into place. Right?
Is it realistic to move some of these more complex factories from, maybe Southeast Asia or wherever they're located to the United States? I mean, some of these factories are very complicated, may take years to build. It's not like there's one ready to go in, suburban Philadelphia. Is it even realistic to move some of these onshore?
Oh my God, you hit the nail on the head, right? The technology transfer cost, the cost to kind of like test these devices, these takes years, right? I mean, if you are bringing a complex component in, you're talking 2 to 3 years to actually bring it in, right? Unless there's the administration provides kind of regulatory relief and figures out a way of bringing labor costs down. The only way you can bring the labor costs down is by bringing robotics and automation. And sure, you can bring robotics and automation in place, but then you need the talent. We still don't have the talent to kind of like support that level of automation. So skill building needs to happen in parallel. So not only are you talking about complex processes that need to be moved into stateside, but also upskilling. And so you've got a bunch of multiple things that are happening where this is going to be a 4 to 5 year program, really, when you think about it. So in the short term, I would say people are just going to dual source potentially, but most likely, this might be an opportunity of adding a little bit more muscle within US to kind of like build that expertise.
And if you're looking at a program of 4 to 5 years, you're probably looking at a different administration who may have a whole different set of rules. And so that seems like a pretty big risk to tear up roots somewhere and try and move everything here only to have the rules change again, possibly.
Exactly. And, the free markets, when they do come back, if they do come back, will automatically, folks will go back to, what's the best way of manufacturing products, which is kind of like the global economy. So without any doubt, if things change, companies will go back to where they were before, right?
For US-based medical device companies, how are the tariffs going to affect their competitiveness in the global market?
So the biggest hit is going to be around innovation, right? So when you have kind of like this flexibility of saying you can price, then automatically you're not competing with global companies. So there's going to be impact on your innovation. You're going to invest less on projects. You're going to delay some of these cutting edge technologies that are out there. So to a certain extent, I would say without the lack of this global economy and global infrastructure in place, it's definitely going to make the US based companies, I would say, a little bit more big fat and unfortunately not so happy.
Oh, you say you're a practice leader or administrator? We've got just the thing. Our sister site, physicianspractice.com, your one-stop shop for all the expert tips and tricks that will get your practice really humming. Again, that's physicianspractice.com.
I guess what, if anything, has been the industry's response to these tariffs? Do you see active lobbying efforts for policy changes, or is it too early in the game for that?
So definitely there's a lot of backdoor discussions going on. There's obviously lobbying going on. You saw that the auto industry was quite successful in delaying some of these tariffs. They got about a month's reprieve. So I'm sure that's happening also with the healthcare infrastructure as well. But I think to a certain extent, the administration is going to be looking for opportunities to obviously win some relief on the drug trafficking side or regards to labor relations and things like that. So I think it's one of those politicking that's happening. But in the end, I think it's going to be one of the things where we'll have to wait and see. I was talking to one of the guys whom I work with. So I worked for about 3 to 4 months in a maquiladora in Reynosa, Mexico. And I was talking to the general manager yesterday, and he was telling me that he thinks it's very unlikely that these tariffs are going to even come in play because he thinks this is so big. These are such big numbers. He's just thinking that this might just be a dilatory tactic. But again, that's one person's point of view, right?
Interesting. I guess, do you think that a deal, I guess, what's your opinion? Do you think there will be some sort of deal that gets done? Do you think these tariffs will be, rescinded? What's your kind of gut feeling on this?
Yeah, so hard to say, but my sense is that this was essentially a promise made to the people, the administration's promise. So it's going to happen. The question is with what magnitude, right? My sense would be that it would be a little bit more muted. Not the numbers that we are talking about, 25%, et cetera, with Mexico and Canada. There's a little bit of a trade war that's going on. So we'll have to wait and see. But my sense would be that this will come down a little bit as, countries, are able to kind of like support, some of the challenges across the border and things like that, right? So that would be my hope. Yeah.
I know in hearing from reading about other industries, a lot of people say, what's worse is the on again, off again. It's 25, it's 50, it's 10, it's 25 again. It's the uncertainty is actually worse than the tariff itself. Is that true for the medical device industry as well?
Absolutely. But the one thing that I was telling you about is that because the cost to transfer technology and et cetera is going to be so much more, stuff that takes years, right? The medical industry, to a certain extent, might be able to kind of like deal with some of those the ups and downs and the uncertainty with things changing on a day-to-day basis, because the stuff that they're going to do is probably going to be more long-term, right? And so things that are no regret moves for U.S. companies is deal sourcing, right? They could start the process immediately and say, hey, listen, we have a site in China. Let's build a facility near Mexico, whatever it, or in U.S., right? Or they could start looking at some of the parts and things like that and start looking at robotics and things like that they could start getting into, right? So some of those things could happen in parallel. But I would say just because lifting and shifting these operations and bringing into U.S. is going to be so much more, there's big inertia of rest here, right? That we talk about. So I would say much less compared to the auto and some of the other retail industries where things change really quickly, right?
Are there any other insights on tariffs that you would like to share?
Yeah, no, I would say one aspect about this tariffs is the companies need to start looking at their efficiency of making products, right? I mean, we lost a lot of talent when we offshored a lot of these products, right? So as you kind of like start thinking about bringing some of these capabilities in-house, right? It's also being done with automation and robotics, but also at the same time, you need to look at, how do you be competitive in the global marketplace, right? How do you establish efficiencies? There are various ways in Lean, Six Sigma, digital that can be brought in that helps in making you more competitive. And so those are some of the things I think the companies should start focusing on, immediately, so that, depending on how things change, they're going to be ready for the uncertainty, right?
Very good. Rohit, this has been a great conversation. It's an interesting topic in very interesting economic times. So thanks for joining me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Todd.
Again, that was Medical Economics Managing Editor Todd Shryock and Rohit Harve, a Technical Operations Partner and Healthcare Expert with PA Consulting. My name is Austin Littrell, and on behalf of the whole Medical Economics and Physicians Practice teams, I'd like to thank you for listening to the show, and ask you please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you don't miss the next episode. Also, if you'd like the best stories that Medical Economics and Physicians Practice publish delivered straight to your email 6 days of the week, subscribe to our newsletters at medicaleconomics.com and physicianspractice.com. Oh, and be sure to check out Medical Economics Pulse, a quick-hitting news podcast that offers concise updates on the most important developments affecting your practice, your bottom line, and the broader healthcare landscape, delivered by the editorial team at Medical Economics. Off the Chart, a business and medicine podcast, is executive produced by Chris Mazzolini and produced by Keith Reynolds and Austin Littrell. Medical Economics, Physicians Practice, and Patient Care Online are all members of the MJH Life Sciences family. Thank you.